While we're talking about good ways of improving and learning about new things, we have Daryn, sorry, what's her name from Agile TV?
Yes, Alish Quirk.
All right. Okay. And yeah, and our sponsor actually, of course, Zilk Engineering. They do something very good where you can something called the Agile Bootcamp, where somebody will actually come and join you on your project and help you. It's not training per se, but they join you, and just maybe one or two people, usually it's just one, will join your project and actually help you run the specific project and help look out for things where you can improve. And I always think that's a bit better than just going to a 2-day training course. So if that seems like a kind of thing, then just speak to some of the Zorky guys. Hi.
Hi, sorry.
Okay. So this talk is about a project that we recently did at a company called Gorkana, and we have two of the guys here, Tim and Lee, who were actually doing all the work on this project. And my job, initially I was assigned as the technical lead, but because I wasn't doing the actual programming, I said I would rather not be the technical lead, and then I became the coordinator. Yeah. So eventually, I tried to give full permission to these guys to do whatever they wanted. So this talk is about that project. Okay, and so I will be giving some of the theory, and then these guys will just share with you what it was like to be on this project and how different things. For instance, what was it like to do pair programming for the first time. All right. Just to give you some context, this was about writing an Excel plugin which talked to an internal web service which fetched data from a third-party provider. And we did a bit of automated testing on this as well, which I will show you a bit later. Would you like to give a brief summary of how it felt to be on this project, or how was it different to your previous company?
I suppose that we felt quite trusted, that we was left to just get on with the project, and not much pressure from management, so it was quite comfortable.
And Tim?
It was the first time I'd done true pair programming, where we didn't really write any code on our own, we were always together. And at first I found that a little bit unnerving, having someone there all the time having to justify everything I was doing. Lee was new to the company as well, so there was a lot of me having to come up with all the answers. But as I got more comfortable, I really found I benefited from it.
All right.
And he brought a lot to the project, just,
Yeah, you said something before about him challenging.
Yeah, it was good to challenge each other on this. I mean, you spend your whole day making decisions about how something's going to be implemented. Having someone else there is just, you feel more comfortable in the decision that you make at the end.
Okay, and just carrying on with what Lee was saying about being left alone, I'm very keen on this idea where you hire the right people and just leave them alone to get on with the job that they were hired for. And it's quite relevant for this project because I sat in on Lee's interview actually. So we did exactly this: hire the right people and just let them, trust them to do a good job. There is this discussion people have often say, is it about people or is it about the process? Especially in Agile, we often go on about processes and tools. But the Agile manifesto actually makes it pretty clear that it's individuals and interactions over processes and tools. But they also point out that there is value in processes and tools. One of the stories I like is this one from the book Lean Software Development, where they talk about General Motors, where they had a lot of problems pretty much, even drug and alcohol abuse. Everybody was staying away from work. They had to hire a lot more people than they needed just to make sure that on any given day there were enough people there to do the job. Even they had strikes going on. 2 years later, so the company was actually closed down, and then 2 years later it was reopened again with Toyota in charge this time. And 2 years after that, productivity was back up and everything was actually going quite smoothly. They said even the quality matched some of that in of Japan's plants. And the interesting thing is that Toyota had to rehire most of the same employees. So 85% of the hourly workers were from the former GM plant. And they say some of the differences between the way GM ran things in Toyota is that GM gave the line managers stopwatches to walk around telling the line workers how to do their jobs, while with Toyota, the line workers were given the stopwatches and they were allowed to make their own jobs more efficient. And at this company, it seemed that everyone's job existed solely to help the line workers, and the workers in turn were fully engaged with their jobs. And I think it's very important to have developers engaged with what they're doing, because it's kind of easy for us to just cut corners and not do a good job. But I think we underestimate how important it is to have developers actually enjoying their work and having this intrinsic value that is talked about in, I think it's Daniel Pink in the book Drive. Yeah, when you basically do an activity because you want to do it, you enjoy doing the activity itself. This is something interesting that came out of the first international conference on lean software systems, where they say how important it is that, basically it points out that you can lose out on knowledge creation and utilization if people aren't respected. So it's I believe it's about processes that put the people first. And that's how you get your best results. Okay. So on this particular project, at the start, we started off by, we had a rough idea of the requirements, and we spent a lot of time discussing how could we test it and what kind of automated testing could we do. Because at this company, there's actually not that much automated testing going on. So we wanted to do a real drive and try to get some of that happening. Abed, who's joining us probably, he did a talk here before where he spoke about the importance of beginning with the end in mind, and that's very much what we're doing. How can we automate testing, and how could we help our UAT department when it came to that? Because there are only a couple of them. All right, I've blacked out some stuff just to try and not give away too much information, but it's just names of programs really and third-party suppliers. But we started off with a bunch of stories already that were given to us, and they had a lot of implementation detail, such as user ID and optional sub-client ID, and we took those, and it did feel like we were going a bit backwards. What we did was we made them a bit higher level, so there's no implementation detail in the stories that we used. It's basically just saying, I want to be able to map a user ID to a, so the user ID was the third-party supplier. They had their own way of managing users and clients and things, and it was different to the way we do it at our company. So we had to have some smart, it wasn't just a one-to-one mapping, it's actually a little bit complicated. And this particular story we were very concerned about, because the original implementation suggested that we should use another application to then connect to a database which would set up the information that the Excel plugin and the web service would need in order to connect to the external web service. And it was further complicated because not all of the clients that need this are actually in this application. So there was talk about some kind of virtual tables or virtual clients, and then we'd have to do additional work here to stop that from picking up these virtual clients. And we were very nervous about this, and Tim did quite a good job about this, that even though the clients had told us what they wanted, we pushed it back, and we managed to, it was kind of central to how the system should work, but Tim and Lee both managed to make progress and give our client more time to make a decision. So we managed not to do all this at the end of the story. We worked in a very iterative way, where we did something, for instance, I'll talk about this walking skeleton that we did, but we would do something with full knowledge that we might have to undo a bit of it as well. So that you would see something on the user interface at the end of one sprint, and at the end of the next sprint that would have been taken back and something else there. And we ended up just actually solving this whole problem with a little text box, and that the users or our analysts can actually just enter, they did the mapping themselves, so we didn't have a technical solution for it, but they could put their own ID, and it turned out to be a lot more flexible. And in the Agile Manifesto, actually the 12 principles behind the Agile Manifesto, we see this: simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. And on this particular project, we managed to not do a lot, which was where it helped us come in actually, it helped us finish a lot sooner than what we would have, and it helped us do a lot less work, and it helped our clients do a lot less work as well when this is up and running. This is a good idea because this graph shows kind of a grid where let's say you introduce a defect in your requirements phase, and you find that defects and fix it, your cost is quite low. The height of this shows a more expensive fix. So if we had just gone ahead and implemented this using this second application, we feel that that would have introduced a defect. And if we had only found it, maybe later on, once it's been deployed, it goes into production, and now clients start complaining that now they need to do too much management to use it and they want some of it taken out, that would have cost a lot more. So by pushing these requirements back, by holding it, by doing work and holding this requirement as in this phase that we knew we weren't clear about it, we could avoid going down the path and increasing the cost, which probably would have come later. We used, because we were doing development, I don't know if you guys want to say anything at this point, or just jump in if I will ask at some points, but just shout if you so our requirements weren't settled, but we were still making progress with the code, and that means that we were doing we were doing concurrent development. This comes from the new product development game, which is pretty much where Scrum came from. If you've never read this white paper, it's a very good paper to read. And they talk about sequential development, how when you start overlapping phases, you start reducing the time it takes to develop something. And ideally you end up in a phase like this where you have a lot of concurrent development going on. Okay, and this is what allowed us to push back this requirement and not commit too early. So it's very much in line with this idea of deciding at the last responsible moment. And we actually did a lot of this. We shared our ideas and thoughts. Every end of each sprint, we really had a proper demo where our user would come and we would show them the little bit of work that we had done. And I would explain to our product owner that it's literally there for, okay, she can see that we were making a bit of progress, but also it was to give her an opportunity to change her mind before it became too costly.
So,
Yeah.
can I just ask a clarification here? When you say concurrent development, you mean developing concurrently with understanding what's going on, with your requirements, not having multiple development streams in parallel?
Yes, I mean the first one, we had one stream of development. It was only these two guys.
Yes.
There wasn't multiple teams. I'm sure that would make things a lot more complicated.
Sure.
So this was a small project, but we feel that there are still some interesting things to learn from this. And ideally you can break bigger projects down to a bunch of smaller projects.
Curiously, how long was the sprint?
10 days or 2 weeks. Yeah. At the beginning of this, I'm not 100% sure how this happened, but maybe it was because of how we discussed the stories at the beginning, but we ended up with stories that were only related to business value. So you wouldn't find things like setting up continuous integration or refactoring or speaking to users or anything like that. It was all, once one of these stories got finished, you knew something had changed on the interface and some value had been added. And I know it's not always a good idea because the board is meant to show transparency and show what other people are working on, and there's a lot of value in doing things like CI and automated tests and that sort of thing. But somehow this happened on this project and it seemed to work. Did you guys feel like you were doing work that wasn't being recognized? No?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right, so I think they were quite comfortable, because there were days when there was basically nothing on the board, or nothing in the spreadsheet that we used. But still, it seemed to work on this project. And here we got some interesting stats, like the first sprint, which is not too much to